Hello and a warm welcome to Federal Special Program Capital Beat. US President Donald Trump early on Tuesday claimed Israel and Iran have reached a complete and total ceasefire agreement, effectively ending what he called the 12-day war. However, Iran issued a quick denial to say that no such agreement had been reached, only for it to issue a statement indicating that fighting from its side had paused. Now, these developments notwithstanding, there were reports of Iranian missile attacks on Israel trickled in, with Tel Aviv claiming that at least 4 people had been killed and 6 wounded in strikes launched after the Trump announced ceasefire. Is a total ceasefire possible? That's question number one. And I'm going to raise a few more questions. How will one decode this ceasefire announcement made by Donald Trump? Who's the winner or the loser? Or is it a win win for all to pander to their political constituency? Joining me this evening is Professor Aftab Kamal Pasha, an international affairs expert and diplomat. Thank you, sir, so much for joining. We have Dakshin Murthy, who is the consulting editor to the Federal and also an international affairs expert. Thank you so much, Dakshin, for joining. And I'll begin with Professor Pasha. Professor Pasha, if I were to ask you, how would you decode Donald Trump's announcement of the ceasefire? Because even after the ceasefire, there have been reports of violation. And Iran said that there has been no agreement. So, how does one read? Is it still a ceasefire which is in process? Because few hours were given to both the countries by Donald Trump.
Yes, thank you, Nilu. Yes, this is an important development. The entire world was awaiting anxiously for an end to this war, which Israel started on the basis that Iran is very close to developing nuclear weapons, which it felt would be a grave threat to Israel's security and to the world peace and security. So, on that basis, Israel attacked Iran, and it launched a series of attacks not only on the three major nuclear sites which Iran had at Natanz and Fordo and other places, but also on its missile production centers and key military facilities, apart from assassinating nuclear scientists and military generals, so on and so forth. So, in all, something about 48 key targets were attacked by Israel, and Iran suffered considerable damage to its military capability, which it had been developing over the last 2.5 decades at least. But the most surprising element, which even the United States and Israel could not fathom, was Iran's capability, its missile capability, hypersonic, cruise, and ballistic missiles, which it launched immediately as retaliation on Israel on key targets, very pinpointed targets, starting from Mossad headquarters to Weizmann Institute, Haifa refinery, Ashdod port, defense ministry, finance ministry, and gas platforms in the Mediterranean Sea, and very close to the Dimona nuclear reactor in Beersheba, apart from the northern Galilee area, which was also under attack. So, a series of targets were hit accurately by Iranian missiles. And this was shocking not only to the Israelis and the Israeli leadership, but to the United States, the West, who have been backing Israel for the last couple of years. But it surprised the entire world, because all of us, including me, we had believed that Israel has a foolproof air defense system guarded by the United States air defense in Iraq and all the 6 Gulf Cooperation Council states, especially from Qatar, which has hosted the largest base. So the Americans, through the third air defense system, were expected to contain any threat to Israel, especially in this context of Iranian missiles. Secondly, America had given the Iron Dome The Israelis had developed their David Sling and Patriot systems, so on and so forth. So they had almost, including Jordan, which was given a sophisticated air defense system to shoot down any incoming missiles towards Israel. So you had almost five-layer tight security to prevent any harm to Israel. But in spite of this, Iranian missiles entered Israeli airspace and they were able to inflict considerable damage, although not to the same extent as Israel did on Iranian facilities. But this in itself shattered the invincibility of Israel. It shattered the morale of the leadership and the people. And more importantly, the people had to cave into basement and bunkers for the last 10 days plus. So this brought the morale of the Israeli people to the lowest ebb, and we could see harrowing scenes with
Right.
no water, with no facilities in these bunkers. So it was a point. The last nail on the coffin was the shortage of air defense missiles. Despite diverting from Ukraine to Israel more than 20,000 missiles, the way in which Iranian missiles were penetrating from one missile to multiple warheads. So the air defense system, Iron Dome, and others had to fire indiscriminately in all directions. So they depleted the anti-missile defense system so quickly
No, but
that
but
there
the
was
question,
acute shortage.
yes, yeah. But Professor Pasha, I'll come to Dakshin and then again come back to you. Dakshin, the big question is that what drove Donald Trump to announce a ceasefire? Now there were reports that the airbase in Qatar was attacked, and after which Donald J.D. Vance and Steve Witkoff and all these people spoke to the Prime Minister of Qatar. There were reports like that. So. Will it be right to say that Donald Trump got scared as to the just seeing the escalation level? Was that the point which triggered this ceasefire, or was it something else which worked behind the scenes? You'll have to unmute. Dakshin, unmute yourself, please. Yeah.
If I have to put it very simply, the ceasefire was announced because the fundamental purpose of Israel and the US was served, which is destruction of the three important nuclear facilities in Iran, right? So even when the US intervened and dropped its bunker buster bombs, what it basically did was in Fardo, it really went deep down. We still do not know the extent of damage it has caused. Iran says there has been not much damage. The US and Israel says that there have been, their nuclear facilities have been damaged. But the essential point is that the purpose of Israel was served and purpose of US was served, and they don't see any more purpose in continuing with this. So it's like they did what they did, and they just want to now close the chapter. So that is the reason why you also find Iran. If you look at Iran, Iran is on the losing side because Iran has been hit, and in turn, Iran has the previous panelist mentioned, Mr. Pasha, the Iran has displayed that it has stuff in it. It has military power, which is something substantial. They have countered the attack. But at the end of the day, what is it that we're looking at? We are looking at the nuclear facilities in Iran. They have been damaged. We don't know to what extent, and that's all there is to it. So, and Iran is just continuing to fire missiles into Israel because obviously Iran is upset. It was an unprovoked attack on Iran by Israel, and it also goes, if you look at the track record of Israel. Israel has consistently done this to in Iraq in Iraq in 1981, and it did the same in Syria in 2007. So Israel is very clear. Nobody else in the region can have nuclear power like what it has. It does not care what the world's opinion is because the United States always is backing Israel and protecting it. And in fact, this time the US went one step further, Trump getting into the act directly and bombing Iran. So it's all done. I mean, the job is done for Israel. Job is done for the US. So why should they continue the fight? It's as simple as that.
Professor Pasha, now what happens to Iran in the long run? I mean, if you look at the way things have happened, and there were also reports of how there will be a succession war. Two, three clerics had been picked up. That who's going to succeed Khamenei? What is really going to happen within Iran now post ceasefire? What can we?
Yes, number one, Iran's atomic energy chief has said that we are going to start rebuilding whatever damage has been inflicted on their nuclear facilities. That is their number one priority. They are not going to give up enrichment plan, and whatever underground facilities they had saved, that perhaps remains intact, and the overground facilities, it should not be difficult for the Iranians to build. This is their number one priority. They want to show that no matter what Israel and America does, or the whole world, they are determined under NPT to have the right to enrich peaceful nuclear program, enrich uranium or plutonium, whatever material they want to have. So there is absolutely no doubt that Iran did not surrender, or was not prepared to surrender, either militarily or peacefully. Its right to a peaceful nuclear program, which it had made it very clear it was for research and medicine. And in the negotiations, they had clearly mentioned that they are not interested in making a nuclear bomb, which Israel and the United States had been propagating, that Iran's intentions. It is a terrorist state. It is sponsoring terrorism. It has its axis of uh, resistance in Iraq, in Syria earlier, and Hezbollah and Hamas and Houthis. So these are all proxies of the Islamic Republic, and they have been doing incalculable harm to Israel and sponsoring terrorism. So this myth has been broken, and Israel has seen the taste of Iranian capability. The second one is,
So
this.
you see Iran, you
No, no,
see Iran
I have to
more.
complete your question too about succession. See, the succession issue has been discussed for a long time. It is nothing new. It has been brought up by the West and Israel in particular. The Guardian Council is there. They will choose among the 300 Ayatollahs who constitute this, like the Pope who is selected by the cardinals and so on and so forth. This is a routine matter, and this has been speculated whether it is Khamenei's son, or whoever is seen as competent by the large gathering of Ayatollahs, who are represented from all parts, including outside. So they will nominate a person in case if there are two things when a successor is appointed. One is if the supreme leader violates the Iranian constitution and the faith reposed in him through the various structures. And the second one is if he is incapacitated. So neither of this is applicable in the present structure, because overwhelmingly Khamenei is supported by all the clergy, and the regime change which Israel and America were hoping has not taken place. People are also rallying behind the Islamic regime. I don't recall the third point which you mentioned.
Right. No, no. I'll come to Dakshin. Dakshin, that who's the winner and the loser in this battle? Actually, if you look at from the geopolitics point of view, from the military power, from that aspect, Iran, of course, has shown that it's not as vulnerable as everyone thought. But who's a clear winner or a loser, or you feel that it's like a win-win for everyone? To unmute, Dakshin, you're muted. Dakshin, you're muted. Yeah.
Clearly, Israel is the winner because they went into this with a very clear aim to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. They have managed to do that, though, like I told you earlier, we don't know to what extent. So their purpose is served. And Iran and Israel, if you look back at what happened in Iraq in 1981 and what happened in 2007 in Syria, if you take those instances, in the case of Syria, in the case of Iraq, Iraq, Saddam Hussein, who was the president then, did not continue with that program, the nuclear program. It ended for all practical purposes. In the case of Syria, it was the Bashar al-Assad was trying to build nuclear capability very covertly, and even that came to an end once Israel attacked Syria. So, in those two cases, in fact, there was an earlier case in the 60s in Egypt when Egypt was trying to develop long range rockets. And then Israel put tremendous pressure on the Germans who were actually supporting and helping Egypt build that. There were assassinations, the engineers were threatened, the German engineers were threatened, and they saw to it, Israel saw to it that it did not continue. So, and even that program halted. So, if you look at the track record, then there is there will be an expectation within Israel and the US that Iran will not proceed further with its nuclear program. But from all indications, Iran is not going to keep quiet. They are going to continue with their nuclear program. It might be delayed, but it does not look like they are going to their nuclear program will collapse like what happened in Syria or in Iraq. So, but as of the moment, as we speak now, it's Israel which is the winner.
But what is Trump's role going to be, Professor Pasha, now in the? Of course, he has now something to offer. But I was reading on CNN that there is a poll which has been conducted by CNN, and there apparently people have disapproved. And I'm just going to read that out according to a CNN poll conducted by SSRS. After the strikes, Americans disapprove of the strikes 56% to 44%. Now, what happens to the popularity rating of Donald Trump? Of course, there are protests. There is a backlash in America also. But how do you see Trump's image, especially as recently as the in India-Pakistan conflict, which happened, the kind of ceasefire announcement he made? Then immediately after this, we see this Israel and Iran ceasefire being announced. So do you think that the perception of Donald Trump, has it enhanced? Has it got better in the eyes of the people? Or he's just trying to run his own agenda where probably he's looking at a Nobel Peace Prize, and this looks as part of a strategy that he'll go to the war-torn nations, somehow the conflict will get escalated, and then he'll announce a ceasefire after a few days. Maybe in Iran and Israel's case, it was 12 days. In India, Pakistan, it was just 4 days. So is that going to be the strategy on which he's going to work and garner a Nobel Peace Prize?
Before answering your question, let me underline the fact that I don't think Israel is a winner. It is Netanyahu was virtually begging President Trump that please save Israel, please save my government. And we are being hammered day in and day out. And President Trump also realized that Iran means business, and that they have attacked Al Udaid base and Ain al Assad base in Iraq, and their missiles were capable of hitting American bases in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Saudi Arabia, and UAE, and the ships in the Persian Gulf. So this narrative that Israel is a winner, and at the same time saying that we don't know what damage Israel and America have done to the nuclear program. There is a contradiction in this. The whole world knows that Iran's nuclear program was underground, and it remains no matter how strong the bunker busting bombs have been used. And Iranians are clearly saying that our program remains immune in the underground. So this problem about nuclear facilities being bombed out and destroyed is superficial, and the consensus among most strategic analysts is that Iran has the capability, and more so that the enriched uranium which Iran has, which can be used in a variety of ways. So the capability of Iran remains intact by most assessments. So to conclude, my own assessment is that there is no winner and no victor, no vanquished. Iran also has lost, Israel also has lost, America also has lost. The biggest fear after Iran launched the missiles on Iran on Israel and the American bases. The biggest base after this was the closure of the Hormuz Strait. You see, the Gulf states became nervous. They had to close their not only airspace, but now if Iran succeeds in closing the waterway
But
along with
this
the Houthis in
wasn't
the Red Sea, so
Pasha.
this would
Pasha,
be a major threat to world shipping, world economy. That is what thing. Coming to your question on MAGA, you see
no,
there
no,
have
no.
been
The,
protests.
the Strait of Hormuz you were talking about, that call was taken by the parliament, but it wasn't implemented. It was a call
No,
which
I
was
said the
leveled.
fear. Iran has the capability to close. That in itself is a potent threat. Iran
Right.
has taken the decision after long deliberation, but it
Hmm.
has the capability, unlike any other Gulf state. It
Hmm.
is in the Iranian territorial waters. It had jammed the GPS of two oil tankers and they collided. And if two, three such incidents take place within the narrow 3-4 kilometer wide state of Hormuz, it can block the traffic. So in that way, the Gulf states became nervous. Apart from the global oil and gas prices and the trade, which would have which had been hammered by this closure, along with the Bab el Mandab and Red Sea, this would have been a major blow to not only the Gulf states
Right.
but also to the world economy. So along with this, your question about America. You see, the American president came to power on the basis that he will not involve America in any other war. So this rebellion within the MAGA, Make America Great, has started, and calls for impeachment within the Republican Party are also growing. That he has exceeded the War Powers Act, and the Congress only can empower him to launch attacks, and this has led to grave consequences because it threatened American bases.
Hmm.
So America also, along with the trade war, tariff war, involving in one more war, it has tarnished the image of Reagan. You promised something and you got our votes, including the Muslim votes in key states, and now you are going against the promise, and impeachment calls were getting louder, and the public opinion rating had dwindled to such an extent that it was alarming for Trump's supporters that no matter what we do under Israeli pressure or Jewish lobbyist pressure, America should not get involved further. So in that way, it was a win-win situation for all the three players. And Russia also played a very important role last night. Putin made a very strong statement accusing the United States and Israel of destabilizing and threatening world peace. And I have never seen such a strong statement coming out of Russia. And Russia means business when it comes to Iran. China also was quite strident in its attack on the United States. So you have three major powers, including Iran,
But the big
acting in a
question,
way.
but but the big question now in Middle East, Dakshin, and I'll come to you for the last question, that how stable is going to be the Middle East? Of course, the ceasefires happened after 12 days of prolonged battle. How long will this ceasefire continue? We do not know. But how stable is going to be the Middle East? And what kind of and geopolitical situations, how do you think they will change from here on post the ceasefire? To unmute, Dakshin, you'll have to unmute yourself.
The Middle East has been plagued by instability for a long time. And especially after the US invasion of Iraq in 2003, the Middle East has not got back to its pre 2003 position at all. It's still facing the consequences of the invasion of Iraq. You know, the rise of the extremist groups like the ISIS, and you had this complete destabilization of various governments. Then you had the popular uprising. So one thing after another, it's really not really settled down, and there is going to be no stability in the Middle East because there are numerous fault lines that crisscross this region, unfortunately. For instance, Israel is dominant. It will continue to be dominant because it is backed by the US. And for instance, Gaza, if you take Gaza, Israel has been bombing Gaza for the last, nearly 2 years now. I mean, in October, it'll be 2 years. and close to 60,000 people have died. What has the rest of the world been doing? What has the rest of the Middle East been doing? I mean, in the US and Israel together have managed to divide the Middle East. You have the UAE, you have the Saudis. They are closer to Israel and the US, and there is complete disunity in the region. So there is that is also one of the reasons why Iran is standing alone. There is nobody in the region who has really come out and backed Iran. There was a kind of a resolution by the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Countries, condemning the attack by Israel. But these resolutions are not even worth the paper that they are written on, because beyond that there has been absolutely no solidarity with Iran. Iran has fought this alone. That's because of the existing fault lines within the region, and that will continue. So instability in the Middle East will continue. This ceasefire is only temporary. And as far as Trump is concerned, Trump is driven by his own agenda. He has seen a massive failure as far as Russia, Ukraine is concerned. He promised peace in one day, and then even if you don't take it literally, until today, which is about 4 months from the time he took over power, he has not been able to bring about peace between Russia and Ukraine. So Trump has his limitations. He has his agenda, which has completely rattled the world, and but even within the US. So we are now living in a situation where instability seems to be the norm. We do not know how the next week is going to be, how the next month is going to be, what are the new things that are going to crop up. So we are in the beginning of very difficult times, and I don't see any kind of stability in the near future.
Yeah, I would like to just add one more thing to what Dakshin Murthy has added. You see, Iran's nuclear program has been delayed. It will be revived, if not 2 years, 3 years, very soon. Secondly, it will lead to proliferation. UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey are already on the way to having their nuclear reactors, and it's very clear that they cannot bank on any country. They must have their own nuclear capability. And lastly, until unless the Palestinian issue is resolved, this kind of turmoil will always be there and affect the instability. And more importantly, the divide between the rulers and the people has become obvious. That the rulers are captive to Israeli-American agenda in this region, and the divide between the people and the rulers is widening. Like the Arab Spring, this will just sweep if Israel continues killing and expelling the Palestinians.
Right. All right. We'll have to end it there. Thank you so much, Professor Pasha. Dakshin, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.